So a slightly different video today actually. I am trying to organise my fiction shelves, and I've just got a lot of books around me now. I've got a lot of unread books. I do kind of need to go on a buying books ban, but to be honest, because I'm finding books I know I'm going to read at some point at 30 pence each. Most of my books are 3 for £1 from my local charity shops. I'm just not going to ever put myself on a book ban, because if I find 3 amazing classics that I know at some point I'm going to read, I'm going to get them for £1. So there's no point me saying I want a book ban, but there is a point in me saying I do need to get on top of how much space I've got for books, because it's going to be the space element that's going to make me change my buying habits, because I don't want to feel like I'm crammed into a house with too much stuff. And now I am a collector and I do have too much stuff. I collect dolls, I collect snow globes, I did go through a phase of collecting swans, and I definitely do like to buy books. I also collect tarot and oracle decks, although I haven't bought a tarot and oracle deck now for a year, so I'm doing all right with that. But today, what's this video all about? Today, I think I'm going to address the space issue, and I'm going to try and organise my bookshelves because they're feeling so disorganised, and I thought you might like to come along on the journey with me. Now, what I've done, I have cleared an entire bookcase downstairs in my lounge, which I thought some of these books could go on, and the 2 bookcases in my bedroom I will leave for now for my classics. So this is one bookcase in my bedroom. This is only a very short bookcase. At the moment, this has it's got a few tarot decks on, ignore that, but it does have my Victorian literature that I've been collecting. Most of this is unread. I'm working my way through it. I'm so excited about this. Every one of these books I am itching to get to. On the top of the bookcase, we've got too much stuff. We've got too much extra stuff. I've also got a big pile of kind of Victorian biographies, or like the context of the Victorian era, different sort of literary books about the Victorian era. So those are non-fiction books up there, but my Victorian books, they are spilling over onto this bookcase here, which is taller. You can see this bookcase is nearly up to the top of my doors, and interspersed amongst these books there's Victorian literature now, because it doesn't all fit on that smaller bookcase. This shelf here is more Jane Austen and sort of Regency period. We've got Anne Radcliffe on there. That book there is a Victorian book. This top shelf is all sort of fairy tales and fairy tale retelling. I've got other sort of modern classics that I found, or prize books as well that I found. So all sorts of different classics, Victorian all modelled in, fairy tales as well, sort of early modern classics as well. It needs a damn good sort out, and I thought, like, some of these books, like the fairy tale books, that would be easy for me to take down and put on the shelf downstairs. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sort out shelves. I'm going to sort out if there's anything I want to get rid of, which I doubt, because a lot of this has been bought recently, and then I am going to see what can go downstairs. I think I want to free this entire bookcase up for Victorian classics and Regency classics. I think that's what I want to do with this bookcase, I think. Right then, let's start with this top shelf. Pop her somewhere safe. She can go up on top there, on top of this other unit in my bedroom, which also has books on top. This has sort of orange. That's my pile of oranges, women's prize books I found in charity shops. Again, like 30p a book. If I spot it and see it's been on the orange prize or shortlisted, I'm going to pick it up for that price. We also have another Bradley doll. We have a Monster High doll. She is a really important doll to me. Let's pop her over here for now. So this is the lovely Everyman's Pocketbook I bought on my trip to London. It's on the fairy tale shelf because it's to do with the forest. I feel like the forest is a really important element of fairy tale retellings or fairy tales in general, so that's why that's going there. If I have any other books that are to do with trees or the forest or connecting with trees, it's going to go on the same shelf. So there's going to be a crossover on this shelf between pagan books and fairy tale books. Oh, I love that book. I think that's beautiful. I'm going to pop them all on the bed for now. So you can see that there is a number of books which are retellings. There are a number of non-fiction books. That's a non-fiction book. We've got classic fairy tales. This one I read at the start of the year. Charles Perrault was one of the first writers to write Little Red Riding Hood down, so that was a really important book that I read earlier. I've got original versions of Brothers Grimm. I've also got a more updated version of Brothers Grimm. I've got my collection of Hans Christian Andersen. I've got one collection of the Andrew Lang fairy tale books, and then like books that I found in charity shops really for their incredible amazing illustrations. I've got the Norton edition for classic fairy tales, and then other historical fairy tales as well. Non-fiction here. Then we've got sort of poetry based ideas around fairy tales. There's all sorts of things on here. Nikita Gill, that's more poetry. We've got fairy tales through a female lens, so Barbara Walker's feminist fairy tales. Up here we've got Women Who Run With the Wolves, Clarissa Pinkola Estes. That's absolutely incredible. There's Angela Carter's Book of Fairy Tales here. So you can see I've got that interest of reading fairy tales through the feminist lens. Have I done that yet? No, I absolutely haven't. My fairy tale reading so far this year, I read The Complete Fairy Tales of Charles Perrault. I read the version of Little Red Riding Hood or Little Red Cap in this Grimm's version, and also in this Grimm's version. I read For the Wolf by Hannah Mitten. I read The Wolf Wilder. I've read this version of Red Riding Hood, Into the Woods. One of you lovely lot sent me the second book in the duology of For the Wolf, the Hannah Mitten book, which is For the Throne, which I haven't read yet. That's going to be my next read. My goal for fairy tale reading is to finish my study on Little Red Riding Hood. So for me, that means reading that one. Also, I want to read Zype's book, The Trials and Tribulations of Little Red Riding Hood. That is a book just focused on different editions of Little Red Riding Hood. And I also want to read this Zype's book as well, The Irresistible Fairy Tale. So that's my challenge for my fairy tale studies this year, but they don't need to be up here. My fairy tale books can go downstairs, so I'm going to do that now. Oh my goodness, I've just thrown that one shelf on my bed for now. Look at the amount of books I've got off that one shelf. Oh my gosh, I'm blown away. I'm going to pull a chair over and I'm going to show you what I've got, because if somebody got a shelf down and went through all the books on it, I'd love it on YouTube. So that's my original Grimm's fairy tale for young and old. That's absolutely rammed full of so many stories. It's a complete collection. Look, it's the complete stories. Absolutely love that. But I bought this year the complete first edition, so this is the original text. So far I've not seen a lot of difference. There are some differences in what I've read, but I just really wanted the original text of the Grimm's tales to compare it with. And then this is an old copy I've got. You can see it's a bit battered, of the complete illustrated stories of Hans Christian Andersen. This is absolutely gorgeous. It's got all these amazing old plates in, which is just so lovely. Look at that. I just love it. You can see, look, it's falling apart. It's really old, but I do love that. Now, when I started researching, one of the first things I did, excuse all my bedding all bunched up, one of the first things I did was I tried to get a timeline. Names began to be thrown up on the timeline of fairy tales. This copy, the Knights of Straparola, was mentioned a lot on the history. This is Giovanni Francesco Straparola, 1480 to 1557. This is one collection of fairy tales, early collection, so I got hold of that. And then this was the other author and collator and writer that was mentioned, Giambattista Basile, The Tale of Tales. So these are both Italian writers, very fundamental in the history of the fairy tale. So I've got those two. Along with them was also the name Charles Perrault, of course, which I've already shown you. This I've read from start to finish. You can see the annotations in here. Unbelievable, some of the old fairy tales. It was reading Charles Perrault that made me realise that this was one hell of a rabbit hole to fall down. It truly was. So those, I would say, are kind of my sort of historical references that I've got so far to research. Alongside that, of course, we've got the collections of Andrew Lang's fairy tales as well. So these were sold, I think, originally in colour books, like the pink book, the green book, the yellow book, but you can get two big collections and anthologies of them. I managed to find this one really cheaply, so I grabbed that. I think I only paid about £3 for this, and it is a monster of a book. So again, that goes in the historical timeline of fairy tales. So belonging with that as well, I would put this collection in here. So these were books that I found in charity shops. I paid 20p for each of these, which is unbelievable. So we've got Hans Christian Andersen, just a collection of a few of them. Again, I bought these for the different illustrators, because I think with fairy tales, the art of illustration is just such a huge part of the whole thing. So that one I picked up in a charity shop. The same with this one, The World's Best Fairy Tales. This was 50p. This is a Reader's Digest anthology, and again, it was to get the varied illustrations and just to see if these were adapted all for like a Reader's Digest audience. And then this one was 20p. This one is just such a find. Look at the end papers in this, guys. This was 20p down the road, where all of the children's fiction is 20p each. But this has got such a range of incredible writers. You've got Hans Christian Andersen, Aesop, Walt Whitman, Tolstoy, Keats, Blake, Rossetti. Look at these, Lear, Sir Walter Scott. So different fairy tales told through these writers, and again, the vintage illustrations in here. This book being 20p, you just can't believe it, can you? Look at this. It is absolutely a beautiful book. I'm really thrilled to have that one in my collection. So I would say now that little corner over there is all sort of history. I've got a couple, like I said, of poetry books. I've got Robert Walser's Fairy Tales and Nikita Gill's Fierce Fairy Tales. So there's a couple of poetry. There's a couple of books which focus here on fairy tales from around the world, so Irish folk and fairy tales. And then this is by Franz Xavier von Schronwerth. I don't know whether I've said that correctly. This is a Bavarian fairy tale collator and collector, and it says, with this volume the holy trinity of fairy tales, the brothers Grimm, Charles Perrault and Hans Christian Andersen, becomes a quartet. In the 1850s, Franz Xavier von Schronwerth, I'm so sorry, I'm killing that name, he traversed the forests, lowlands and mountains of northern Bavaria to record fairy tales, gaining the admiration of even the brothers Grimm. So these are like kind of lost fairy tales that were newly discovered. So that's really interesting to put location into the mix. Over here I've got a couple of copies of one of my favourite childhood stories, which I suppose, is this a fairy tale? Perhaps not, but not only do fairy tales cross over into pagan studies, but they also cross over into childhood literature, which I love. So for one reason or another, Peter Pan is on here. This is an edition that I bought last December, and then this one is another one that I found in the charity shop for 50p this year, which I just pounced at. Look at that beautiful illustration. It used to belong to Esther, given to her for her christening on the 2nd of June 2002 by Auntie Pauline. Well, Auntie Pauline, I've got it now and I will treasure it. These are all retellings. These are the retellings that I've already shown you of Little Red Riding Hood. I've only got For the Throne left of those to read. I've got other retellings. I've got this, I'm not sure whether that is a retelling, to be honest. It's just got angels in. It's just ended up on my fairy tale shelf. I've got Snow White and the Huntsman, that was found in the charity shop. Defy the Night is Robin Hood. My daughter bought me that for my birthday. I've got The Wolf and the Watchman, another charity shop find. Entwined from the 12 Dancing Princesses, that's another charity shop find. Not Good for Maidens, another charity shop find. I think that's another 12 Dancing Princesses. So Cruel Beauty used to be my daughter's book and she's given it to me. That's Beauty and the Beast. Alice is another book that my daughter bought for me for my birthday. Alice in Wonderland, of course. We've got the same author, Christina Henry. These are more like horror retellings. I haven't read these at all. My daughter has read this one and she said it was quite scary. But this is her retelling of Peter Pan. Then I've got a couple based on Rapunzel, and I think after I've studied Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel will be the next fairy tale I focus on. So I've got Naomi Novik's Uprooted and Mary McMine, The Book of Gothel. And then all the way over here is a Marissa Meyer Heartless, which is the Queen of Hearts. So those are just straight retellings. These are more fairy tales through a feminist lens. So this one is that Barbara Walker book. I've got Angela Carter's Book of Fairy Tales, Carter the Bloody Chamber, and Clarissa Pinkola Estes, Women Who Run with the Wolves. And then over here I've got a pile of non-fiction. So Jack Zipes is the name that came up over and over again when I was researching non-fiction books for fairy tales. So I've got The Irresistible Fairy Tale, The Cultural and Social History of a Genre. That's a Zipes book. Then just focusing down on Little Red Riding Hood, The Trials and Tribulations. That's edited by Jack Zipes. This is the book that I found in Stratford-upon-Avon book haul last month. So this is a Marie-Louise von Franz interpretation of fairy tales. This is another Zipes book, Don't Bet on the Prince, Contemporary Feminist Fairy Tales in North America and England. So that again links to locality. This I see recommended all the time. The uses of enchantment, the meaning and importance of fairy tales. That's Bruno Bettelheim. Fairy tales can change your life. Unlock your future with creative exercises inspired by storytelling. And then of course the second Norton critical edition of the classic fairy tales. So that's it, guys. That is my entire collection so far, excluding my books on the forest, but that's my collection so far, and now I need to go downstairs and find a shelf for all of this to go on. And I've yapped on so long, I think I might have to do this bookcase reorganisation, a video of one shelf at a time. So this is going to be my fairy tale shelf. Wow, honestly, I had no idea how many books that this shelf was holding. So I've got one empty bookshelf upstairs. I'm going to show you the bookshelf now downstairs. So this is the bookcase in my lounge. It did used to have like all knicks and knacks on, and my swan collection. You can see aspects of my swan collection. I also have always collected Hornsey pottery, which is very, very woodlandy. You can see I've left a couple of Hornsey pottery items out there. It looks very fairy tale, doesn't it? I've got my Stories of the Trees, Woods and Forests out at the front because that's my keepsake book that I bought in London last week. And you can see I've almost got them all onto one shelf. My original Grimm's fairy tale and Hans Christian Andersen's tale have spilled over down onto the second shelf, but that's okay. So that's my fairy tale shelf, guys. So I've got a small shelf there. Look, I've got all my swans on the top. I've got a shelf here I can utilise. I've got a shelf here. I've got a shelf here. You can see I've got some tarot cards. I've got all our DVDs and my daughter's decks, tarot and oracle decks there. I need to find somewhere else for the DVDs and the decks to go. And then I will have 1, 2, 3, 4, another 5 shelves down here. So that's going to really help out. There's me thinking I'd be able to do the entire transformation in a 20-minute video, and I've done one shelf and it's well over 20 minutes. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's my fairy tale shelf sorted. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll turn this into a series, my bookshelf series. Why not? So come back for the next video in the next shelf. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but I hope you enjoyed that, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.